Hey, how are you doing? How about some last-minute thoughts before one of the most memorable elections, presidential elections in the United States, maybe of my lifetime, as opposed to 2000, Bush Gore. Okay, so I figured that I'd offer up some points. I think from a Canadian perspective, see, our media, if you have a problem with American media, Canadian media is, we have the CBC, which is government-owned media, and since our government has been liberal overwhelmingly over the last several decades, you kind of know which way that leans. 80 to 90% pro Hillary Clinton. Now, I could start with, talking about how Clinton has all these scandals. It's very contradictory. If I had to point to one specific issue, I'd probably go with gay marriage. From 2002 up until 2010-ish, or somewhere around there, she was staunchly opposed to gay marriage. Then she veered a little bit to civil unions. And when she was asked about her flip-flop, she was very contentious.
I'm pretty sure you didn't answer my question about whether you evolved or it was the American public that changed.
Because I said I'm an American, so of course we all evolved, and I think that's a fair.
So your opinion
that's
changed.
A fair conclusion.
So you're saying your opinion on gay marriage changed, as opposed to you just felt it was comfortable.
Somebody is always first, Terry. Somebody's always out front, and thank goodness they are. But that doesn't mean that those who join later in being publicly supportive or even privately accepting that there needs to be change are any less committed. You could not be having the sweep of marriage equality across our country if nobody changed their mind. And thank goodness so many of us have.
So that's one for you changed your mind.
I have to say, I think you are being very persistent, but you are playing with my words and playing with what is such an important issue.
I'm just trying to clarify so I can understand.
No, I don't think you are trying to clarify. I think you're trying to say that, I used to be opposed and now I'm in favor and I did it for political reasons, and that's just flat wrong. So let me just state what I feel like you are implying and repudiate it. I have a strong record. I have a great commitment to this issue, and I am proud of what I've done and the progress we're making.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify what I was saying. No, I was saying that you maybe really believed this all along, but, believed in gay marriage all along, but felt for political reasons America wasn't ready yet and you couldn't say it. That's what I was thinking.
No, that is not true.
Okay.
I did not grow up even imagining gay marriage, and I don't think you probably did either. This was an incredibly new and important idea that people on the front lines of the gay rights movement began to talk about, and slowly but surely convinced others of the rightness of that position. And when I was ready to say what I said it.
When she was doing the hearings about Benghazi and Libya, obviously she was facing Republicans. But at the end of the day, America is not a democracy like a lot of countries. So I guess I'll start with that. Simply because of all the money that it's involved. Teddy Roosevelt is arguably the last great president. What did Teddy Roosevelt do? Okay, he broke up monopolies, legally going through the court system. He had a lot to do with the Panama Canal. And overall, he was considered progressive for his time. Environmental initiatives. I was a great president. If you compare Teddy Roosevelt to a lot of other presidents of the 20th century, Trump brings up Reagan. Reagan was a terrible president, but that's for another topic. What I will get to on this point is I don't think most people understand I guess politics is a niche. And for the majority of the electorate, it comes down to 1, 2, maybe 3 issues. And when it comes to Trump and Trump supporters, I have screenshot a lot of conversations on Facebook, social media in general, many articles. 90%, seemingly 80-90% of the media is against Trump. Obviously, there's a lot to latch on to, a very negative campaign. But you can't help but look at the fact, for most people, it's about jobs. If you're somebody that's worked in a factory for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you lose that job because of outsourcing, and Donald Trump comes along and says that he's going to bring those jobs back, it's not so much that he's going to do it or the likelihood of him doing it. It's just that in your position, in that situation, what do you have to lose? And this is the default factor of a Trump presidency. But the American system is not a democracy.
So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear, that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think a communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us.
In 1980, I'll just quickly cover this. In 1980, there was this man called John B. Anderson. And a lot of people say that he was one of the last prominent, honest politicians. And he ran as an independent against both Reagan and Carter. And Jimmy Carter did not want to participate in a debate that included John B. Anderson. So there was a league of women's voters, I believe, that ran the debate. And Reagan debated against John B. Anderson, and Jimmy Carter wasn't there. And ultimately, they had one debate, Carter and Reagan, without Anderson. And Anderson garnered 6.6% of the vote. The reason that I bring that up is after that you had 84 and 88. And they were, you know, the two candidates, no third candidate in sight. And then Ross Perot ran in 1992. And at one point, he actually polled higher than both Bush and Clinton. And he ended up getting almost 20% of the vote, despite dropping out of the race midway through. And there's always conspiracy theories around. But what I would focus on is that in the preceding election, both the Republicans and Democrats came together and made an agreement to make sure that Ross Perot would not be in the debates. So we're not even talking about money here. This is a huge issue with American politics. We're not talking about money. We're just talking about two parties saying, no, we're not going to let anybody else debate. No, it would break up the vote even more. Voter turnout in the United States it's pretty sad. It's quite pathetic. Now, sure, you're not going to expect 80 to 90% voter turnout like in Sweden, because Sweden is a very small country. But India has over 1 billion people. And in the 2014 election, India was 66%, which is better than any president election. In 1996, it was 49% voter turnout for the presidential election. Now, the United States has elections for Congress and Senate every 2 years. And the voter turnout for those is usually under 40% in the 2 years in between the presidential election. So when you're talking about Trump and his chances to win, and of course I'm going to post my predictions. Sorry to keep you waiting. But you really have to think about if 40% of the electorate is not voting, and I'm not saying that's a consistent 40%. You know, some people might vote one year, they won't vote the next year. So you got 40%. you really, in this kind of situation, you only need, you don't even need 5%, but let's say you got 5% of that 40% that isn't voting. Okay. And the thing to keep in mind with Trump, and why I'm going to post the prediction, I'm not, it's very difficult, it's a close race. I mean, you're really gambling at this point. But looking at the Electoral College, it always comes down to Florida. It's always Florida. If Trump doesn't win Florida, he'd have to win Pennsylvania and Michigan. That's unlikely. See, Florida is a toss-up. And people are saying, well, Trump has to run the tables. So he has to win the toss-up states. So he's got to win North Carolina, Florida, which he can do. And then that wouldn't be enough. Ohio he has, by the way. And that wouldn't be enough. He would have to have Iowa, and then possibly Nevada, Colorado. So for this situation, I've given him those states. So he's sitting at 275 because he's got Maine 2nd District, which he's polling very well. I don't think he's going to take New Hampshire, but if he took New Hampshire, I'm not considering Michigan or Pennsylvania. I think that it's reasonable. And at the end of the day, you have to think about this. The numbers, the actual numbers in the election are staggering, overwhelmingly in Clinton's favor. You have to think about it this way. She spent at least 3 times as much money, just overall. I know that Trump's campaign isn't, self-funded in traditional sense. Like, he's going to get a lot of that money back. But he's not pandering for donations. The problem in a lot of political campaigns is you have to be, and in America you don't have the same restrictions that you have in other countries. So you can have all this money pumping into your campaign, and somewhere along the lines, I feel it's a sham. And that's why I say it's not a democracy like in other countries. So you have that Clinton advantage, and the offices. I believe I read one paper where in Florida at one point Clinton had 29 offices and Trump had 1. And now in a lot of those states, Clinton has at least double as many offices. So she's got the ground game. It's a machine. And is Clinton above the law? Absolutely she's above the law. This idea that no one is above the law, when you have big-name figures that have justice served against them, it's typically because there are deals made behind on the interests of somebody else who is a big player. And you have like a sacrificial lamb kind of situation. So, again, the reason that people are voting Trump is the default factor. You know what you're going to get with Clinton. And here's my argument. People who are calling, the fear-mongering. So it's from the same side. And the racism and sexism is from the same side. And when you have late-night show hosts or John Oliver or whoever, you have to look at who is buying them. And everybody's bought in American politics. So when you hear something that's favorable to Clinton and bashing Trump, you have to look at the substance of the arguments. If you're going to mention racism and Trump and you have the class action lawsuit from the 70s, to my knowledge, that lawsuit was against other people, including Trump. And you look at that and you say, yes, real estate practices that were discriminatory. You have several Democrats that were actual Klansmen. The Robert Byrd. I'm not going to say that Robert Byrd was a mentor of Hillary Clinton or anything like that. But Robert Byrd was a Klansman. He was a recruiter. And he was faithful to them.
There are white niggers.
Into his 40s, he wrote a letter.
I've seen a lot of white niggers in my time.
And he died in office as a senator.
But
you have Woodrow Wilson, who's probably the most racist president of the 20th century. He supported the KKK. I mean, this is, you can't go. George Wallace was a Democrat. He was a Southern Democrat. He was a still Democrat. In 1983, when he ran for the election, after being out for a couple of cycles, he got over 90% of the black vote, which is something that we don't have in Canada for good reason. We don't have that demographic. How do you define that? Is Obama black? Anyways, a lot of people would say he is. how does that happen? How do you have George Wallace, who says segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation for... He gets 90+% of the black vote.
In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
Years after saying that. That's America. So with Trump, you have people that are saying, maybe I'll get that job back that I enjoy doing. Maybe I won't. I have nothing to lose. The Prime Minister of Canada with a majority government, which is when the Prime Minister, this party, has the majority of the seats in Parliament, has much more power than the President of the United States. The President has to contend with Congress and the Senate. And Senate and Congress change every 2 years. So, there are safeguards in place. You can't pass whatever you want. People know that he's not going to be able to build the wall. So what is he going to do? That's the ticket. You know what you're going to get with Hillary Clinton. You don't know what you're going to get with Trump. But to a lot of people's eyes, it can't possibly be worse than Clinton. So the argument is basically between it can be worse with Trump. And what? Did anybody surprised? They're saying, I am amazed that America could get down to these two candidates. Really, though? Because those are the people who have the time and the money to campaign for 2 years. For 2 years they're campaigning. In Canada, and a lot of other countries, your campaign is maybe 2-3 months. Maybe. There's a limit to how much money you can spend. But in America, no. No, I just campaign for 2 years. Hell, why stop there? Campaign for 3 years, 4 years. Even before you've won, you start campaigning for the next 4-year term. It doesn't matter. You have overlapping funding between the two parties. Yes, that's true. If you look close enough, you will find overlapping funding. It's like me owning 2 baseball teams that go to the championship game. I can't lose. And that is why a Trump candidacy is the default candidacy.
Mr. Perot, what do you believe tonight is the single most important separating issue of this campaign?
I think the principal issue that separates me is that 5.5 million people came together on their own and put me on the ballot. I was not put on the ballot by either of the two parties. I was not put on the ballot by any PAC money, by any foreign lobbyist money, by any special interest money. This is a movement that came from the people. This is the way the framers of the Constitution intended our government to be, a government that comes from the people. Over time, we have developed a government that comes at the people, that comes from the top down, where the people are more or less treated as objects to be programmed during the campaign with commercials and media events and fear messages and personal attacks and things of that nature. The thing that separates my candidacy and makes it unique is that this came from millions of people in 50 states all over this country who wanted a candidate that worked and belonged to nobody but them. I go into this race as their servant, and I belong to them. So this comes from the people.